Has the response surprised you?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I've been a model for 10 years and I do influencer work. And sometimes the videos that get traction like that, you're just so surprised because you're like, wait, there was other videos that I've done that got nothing and they were so powerful. And so it always takes you by surprise which ones kind of go viral like that.
Welcome to What Matters Most, Believing Beyond Borders, a podcast series in the voices of the completed life, told from the perspective of three women: a TikTok influencer and life coach, an actress and playwright, and a rabbi in New York City. In each episode, we will hear the story of a woman who crossed over borders, state and national borders, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual borders, to be with someone they loved and to arrive at a new understanding of what matters most. My name is Lynn Barger Elliott, and I am the executive producer of the Voices of the Completed Life podcast. Today, our guest is Tate Cutler. Allie is a model, a coach, and a social media influencer. In May of 2023, you invited 49,000 TikTok followers and over 252 Instagram followers into the final week you spent with your grandmother. She had received a cancer diagnosis and decided to do medical aid in dying in Canada. And as of this week, each of your 5 videos was seen anywhere from 250,000 to 5 million times. They prompted thousands of conversations on what we believe about how we live and how we die. Your grandmother was a beautiful woman. She had a sense of style. I love that lizard skin print blouse and those dangling silver earrings. She looks stunning.
Her photo is my screensaver right now on my phone. And when I look back at her and I see other photos of her, just the way that she is, we're very similar in our kind of no bullshit approach to life. And she was always she told me that she was always kind of the tomboy of her time. Like she was winning races when women weren't, competing in sports at school. Like she would beat all the boys. And she told me that when she went to her high school reunion, that some of the guys she went to school with were like, "Oh, Zinni, you are our hero," and she was their hero because she was just did exactly what she wanted.
Did everybody call her Bubby, or was that your name for her?
Yeah, everyone. The Bubby is the word that all Jewish grandmothers are called, and it was something that just from a very, very young age, that was Bubby. I didn't even know her real name was Cynthia for most of my life because it was just Bubby.
So she received a diagnosis of cancer. Do you know about her thought process and how she decided to choose MAID and dying?
When I asked her about it, when I did all these interviews with her, I asked, how long had you been thinking about MAID? Because I don't know, I think MAID only became legally available in Canada in the 2000s, maybe around 2010, somewhere around that time. And she had said that she'd made her mind up 40 years earlier that she wanted to, when the moment came, she did not want to go in a painful, long, drawn out death. And she wanted this option available to her. I think even at that time, she was like, if it's not here, then I'll go to Switzerland or I'll go somewhere where I can get this. And when I asked her about, when she got the diagnosis, if this was something she was still really committed to, she was 100%. There was just no shaking her. There was no changing her mind. She was just like, this is what it is, accept it or not. And so I think her mind had been made up for a very long time.
And is that something that she, your whole family knew about, that she had talked about
Yeah, I think like when I asked my parents about it, they said it had never really been, I guess, real or fleshed out because, people say things and then they change their mind. And I think when the time comes, um, fair enough, we can have change of heart on anything. But when she really got the diagnosis and in the first week was like, told us this is what it was, yeah, we were all like, I guess, on the same page that like this is 100% happening now.
You told your followers that you were against medical aid and dying, but that having had conversations with her, you changed your mind. Were the things that she said, or
No, I mean, yes, that all of that does come into it. And when you have a loved one who's going through their own unique death process, like to see it up close and personal and to see the way that they're reconciling that or the way they're thinking about that, I think that's enough to change most people's minds. But for me, I really came from having to examine my beliefs and see where I was out of integrity or where things were maybe being hypocritical or not lining up. And for me, I am number one, body sovereignty. Like that's my main value in this life, in this world. And that means, and when people ask what that means, I mean in every way possible that no one else should have, no government, no person should ever have the right to tell someone what to do with their bodies, bar nothing, literally bar nothing. So when I looked at that and I was like, wait, that's my highest value. So where is this resistance in me coming from for MAID or, medical assistance in death? It really came from, I'm also spiritual, so it came from a spiritual pre-belief that, source, divine, creator, whatever you want to call it, has the final say in the moments that we leave the earth. And for me, I still believe that, but at the same time, it's kind of like that's not in alignment at all with body sovereignty because if you think it should just be left up to God, well, who's to say that God isn't putting this belief or this idea in this person that they want to leave now or they want to leave before it gets really painful or they want to choose their own way out. And the second thing that was kind of didn't add up for me in my own belief systems was, just believing that a lot of people in my comments in the videos, they said, well, dogs get this kind of death, and so why shouldn't humans? But then on the other side, people were like, they shouldn't be put down like dogs. It was like the animals, the way that we were ending their life with euthanasia was being used a lot on either the pro or the con side. And for me, I think if we're putting animals down and, um, we think that's a good thing when they're in pain or when they're at the end of their life. It's something we would want to do for, our best friend or dog or cat or whomever. Then what's the difference between an animal and a human? To me, that's just a speciesist argument, which is saying that like dogs and cats are either better or worse than us, and so they get a different way of how they die. That doesn't add up in my worldview. I think all living beings have souls, and we're all conscious and want to live and want to die the way we want to die, and we deserve, basic rights on that choice of what to do with our bodies. And so for me, that there were a lot of beliefs I had to reconcile and kind of shuffle around and go, wait, does this line up with this? Does this line up with this? And that all happened, in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 months with this conversation on MAID.
yeah, that's a lot. And I admire your ability to just see some inconsistencies which can coexist in our thinking until it actually they're kind of revealed in a person in a
Yeah.
situation like this, that you realize, wait, some of the things that I do hold don't necessarily align.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a skill that I think a lot of people haven't been taught, and it's about understanding maybe our cognitive biases and not buying into our identities as being like, well, I think this, and this is where all the other beliefs come from. We have to be prepared to be wrong, and we need to be prepared to, you know, not really make our beliefs or ideas our identity. And that's the thing, is like when our beliefs are our identity, then we run into the problem of we get so defensive if someone proves those beliefs wrong because they're saying that we're wrong. When really beliefs are just, strong opinions loosely held. Like let's see what works for now in this day and age, and throw away what doesn't work anymore, and get, constantly refine the ways that we view the world, and be open to being wrong. Like it can be really fun. A lot of people get defensive when they're wrong, but I mean, someone proving me wrong and changing my whole worldview, like that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, that's one of those borders that you're crossing over, and it's exciting because you see the world in a whole different way, and you can see the world through somebody else's lens. And um, I love that you were able to see the world through your grandmother's lens by being willing to take that journey.
Yeah, I think when she informed us, I don't, like I told you, my Bubby's one of her greatest, like, personality traits, in my opinion, is she just doesn't censor. So part of it was that when she was like, I'm doing this, and I have so much respect for people like that who are like, this is what's happening. So deal with it how you need to deal with it. But for me, yeah, I think there was no nervousness to tell me, I'm sure my brother, who's just similar to me, and that body sovereignty is number one. But I'm sure she could see that, through the way I lived my life and my beliefs, that there was going to be no judgment that I had about her decision.
So you spent the week in Canada with her before her death. What did you do? What conversations? What did you talk about?
Yeah, so I went there, and it's so hard. I'm a new mom, and it was so hard to try to get a week to go to Canada. Like it was just, it's not work related. It's not like I'm not with the baby. My husband's watching my baby by himself. There was a lot of things that needed to get lined up for me to be able to do that. And all the while knowing like this isn't going to be a vacation. This is going to be me wrapping up things with my grandmother and saying things that need to be said, and helping her process and helping me process this this winding up of a life. And so when I went there, I was, just fully prepared to, like, she didn't have much energy. Like, we're not going to be going on walks. We're not going to be going, to do crazy stuff, maybe like we used to. This is going to be me helping her in her home, and she's going to be sleeping a lot, and she's going to need help down the stairs, and I'm going to need to drive her to appointments. And that's the majority of what we did. But I also was able to book us in for a facial and a massage. And she just like does not spend money on self-care like that. Like she just thinks it's crazy that my generation, will spend $80 on a massage. And so I booked us in, and I took her for this facial, and she was just afterwards, her face was like glowing. It was so beautiful. Her eyes were big and bright. She looked so energized and refreshed. And just being able to give her that when she would never normally give herself that, um, that was amazing. We also went out to two dinners, and I took her out to like a really fancy restaurant. It was like, here, I've made a reservation. It's like expensive. It's like Michelin starred. This is where we're going. What do you want to eat? And what did she want? I think she wanted roast beef, or, oh no, she wanted a rack of lamb. So we went to a place that had that, and, just had very slow walks to wherever we were going. But then when we were home, we would watch HGTV. She loves HGTV, and we would watch interior design channels, which I love too. I'm so into interior design, and we'd watch these homes go from terrible little apartments to gorgeous homes, and we would criticize the work that they were, oh, that looks terrible, or that looks good. And so we did that most evenings. And then whenever we had downtime, that was when I got to kind of interview style ask her the questions that that I had never asked when I was a kid. Because when you're a kid, you think people are going to be with you forever. And I got to sit down for hours and just go through her old photos and be like, who's this? What's that? Where was your wedding? Who was your first love? Where was your first kiss? I just got to ask her all of these questions. And there was almost so much new information that I couldn't soak it all up. And it left me just, it left me feeling, if it's possible, even more sad, because I got to see this whole other dimension of this woman that I had never known, and just realized, like, we're not different. Like, we're not different. We had our own dreams and goals and families, and how weird and wild this life is, that it's just winding up for her now. And she was just like me at one point. And it was also extremely beautiful, because I see the ways that we're similar, and that I'll carry with her in my DNA and my memory to my children. And it was that was the best part, was just getting to ask her endless questions.
One of the beauties that we use the term completing a life, when somebody like your grandmother and you had the opportunity to be so intentional about going there and finding these kinds of experiences that would bring joy, but also asking those questions, that you learn so much about who she was, but who you are too, and who you are as a mother, carrying on this family. You have the great grandchild of this amazing grandmother.
Yeah.
Is there something she said that surprised you about what she believed, or?
Yeah, there was like a couple things that I just remember being like either surprised or shocked or just laughing. One of the things she told me was, when, like, she'd been with my grandfather for 40 plus years, and he died about 20 years ago. And I always thought that they were high school sweethearts. And she told me, I was like, so were you with other people before Arnie? Like, when did that happen? And she said, well, no, she had been dating around quite a lot. And she had been with this one guy who, I can't remember, it was a great name. It was like Finkelstein or something. It was like Ray Finkelstein. I'm sure it's not that, but it sounded like that. And he was like this wealthy, just like wealthy, kind of car businessman. And she was with him, and there wasn't much chemistry. And then she met Arnie, and she said he was ugly gorgeous. That's how she characterized him. He was like not really attractive, but there was something about him that was like so charismatic and cute. And she started dating him, and then she was still dating the other guy at the same time, and they went to New York together. And Arnie like found out she was there, and went and tracked her down, and found her on the street, and was like, why are you here with this guy? I want to be with you. I love you. No, he said, I think I love you. And she said, you think? And and from that moment on, they were together, and she left the other guy, and they got married. I think it was like 3 months later. And just looking at her wedding, like her wedding invite and the information on her wedding, the whole wedding, like the flight with the event venue with the food and everything, it was like $50. It was like so ridiculously cheap. And just looking at that, it was like, was that a lot of money at that time, or was that like normal? Finding out the information about the logistics of her life back in, the 50s and the 60s, like, that was so surprising. And I think that the most surprising or interesting things that I found out about her was just how relaxed she is about everything. She just really can't get wound up. I mean, technology really pisses her off. Like, she doesn't have a phone, and she's only available to be called if she's by her, hardwired computer, which is in between the hours of like 2 to 3. And she doesn't do Ubers, and she just doesn't want technology in her life. That does irritate her, but everything else, she's just like, meh, meh. The world could be ending around her, and we just she just doesn't like buy into it. She doesn't give her energy to it. And so watching someone who was like so relaxed and at peace with what was happening in the world was kind of astonishing for me to witness.
Was she always like that, or do you think that's part of her embracing death?
Yeah, I asked my dad. He said she was always like that. He said she was just always like in one person's eyes it could be seen as like not much ambition, but in another person's eyes, for me, uh it just registers as like she's just she's always been at a state of ease that a lot of people are constantly striving to get to, and it just comes naturally to her. Like that's just who she is, and she's just constantly at ease with everything. And for someone who's, a millennial in a world that's getting more expensive, that's like seems like it's blowing up, and like there's just constant fear in the news cycle, seeing someone that at ease just feels wild. Like it feels,
It's like going to a spa.
yeah,
Just
kind of.
being,
Yeah. And
yeah.
she never goes to the spa, but she's always at ease.
She is a spa.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the way she said something about your grandfather would be waiting for her.
Yeah. When I asked her in the interview, I was very surprised by that answer. Because she's actually an atheist. Like she doesn't believe in God. And we are Jewish, but we're, secular. She's never really been involved with the religious side of Judaism. And so sometimes when I talk to her about my spiritual woo-woo stuff, she just laughs or rolls her eyes because she just doesn't believe in a lot of the things I'm talking about. But then at the last question, when I said, what do you think's going to happen? Like when you die, at the moment that you die. And she said, I think Arnie will be there and they'll say, what took you so long? And I was just like, wow, like, I wonder how she reconciles that. Like, there is no God or no afterlife, because she just thinks when you die, that's it. Poof, the lights go out. But Arnie's going to be there, and are her thoughts changing about this now as she gets closer to death, as I'm sure many people's do, right? Because it can be so scary that we reach for things that are comforting to us, that help us in those final moments. And I was wondering if that's actually just what she really believes, and then trying to understand the beliefs behind that. But I mean, I personally think Arnie is definitely going to be there, and he's going to be welcoming her, guiding her over the threshold. And I actually had I was speaking to a psychic maybe a couple weeks ago, who told me that he was like right there and guiding me and protecting me and removing obstacles from my way. And it just made me feel like he's so much closer, than I think, or that I can perceive. And I think he's really just probably waiting and ready for her.
So my next question was going to be, you have said that you're a spiritual person. How has this experience of watching your grandmother complete her life and then losing her life, how has that deepened your spirituality?
Well, first, let me answer, because I've gotten so many questions about this from reporters or people on social media saying, has your grandmother now passed? And for the sake of this interview, because I think this will be coming out after, she's actually chosen her day now, and her day is going to be on Sunday. And she's just gotten to a point where she has no energy. She can't really walk or do anything by herself anymore. And just all kind of life motor functions are gone now. And so she's decided on Sunday. So with that being said, she has yet to pass. And it's so interesting doing this interview on the threshold of that, on the brink of that decision, where it's imminent and it's happening soon. I will say that my spirituality has just deepened in so many ways, because I haven't really before witnessed death. Like when I was young, my parents didn't bring me to the funeral of my grandfather because they thought I was too young and it would be traumatic for me and my brother. My other grandfather, I wasn't there to witness him because it was during COVID and everyone was being limited in their movement. And so I'd never really had a person close to me die. And this is my first experience as a 33-year-old woman watching someone more intimately, more closely pass away in like front of my eyes. And so what that's done was like, especially after those videos and when all the videos were going viral because it was so present, there were so many people writing me. It was just so close to me, where I had to really sit down and think. Like death felt so close for the first time. And for the first time ever, I think I was able to really contemplate what it means to die and to get my bearings on what I believe happens and how I want to prepare for it and how I want to enter into this space where I can wind up my own life when inevitably that will come with no fear and with the sense of acceptance. And I think that the last 3 months, I've definitely hit a place. I'm a coach as well, so I help women with a process called Rapid Rewire. And so I did that on myself, and I did polarity work about death. And one of the biggest polarities that most people have not integrated is life and death. And there's a way that you can integrate them. And I remember doing that the day after I got home from seeing my bubby in Canada, and I did a really powerful process integrating life and death. And after that, things have just shifted. Like I just don't feel scared anymore. And I don't feel, I mean, I'm obviously sad to lose the material, earthly version of someone here that I love, that is inspirational to me. But I also know that for me personally, and I can't speak for everyone, but I know for me that life is recycled and we're just constantly going through this endless, repetitive wheel of motion when it comes to life and death. And so that nothing that ever dies is truly lost. And I mean, even that makes sense for me in terms of, quantum physics or Newtonian physics, where it's really no energy can be lost. It's just converted into something else. And having my own experiences with, maybe you could say, spirits or ghosts, especially, I've never had anything like that until we moved into this house and I started having some weird experiences. And to really flesh out what that means, does that mean they're here? Does that mean that they're in this next dimension? When we die, do really the lights go out? Does that make sense? Like in any way that I see the universe, in the laws that I perceive around me, does that make sense that something would just die and disappear and go away forever? And nothing I see gives me evidence of that. So for me, I think the biggest thing is, as my baby has come in and this new life has come in, seeing that full cycle and completion, watch this life go out, seeing that has made me not, I wouldn't say there's 0% fear, but there's probably 75% less fear than there was before, of knowing that this is just a natural part of this cycle, and that I trust nature and I trust source, and anything it has planned cannot be evil. And so for me, it's definitely, I would say, pretty much almost gotten rid of my fear of death.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful to live that way.
Hmm.
When you live differently when you're not afraid.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything changes.
What are you going to do Sunday?
So Sunday, I wanted to go out and be with her at this final moment. My parents are going to go out, and my brother and I wanted to come, but we spoke with her, and she said it would be too stressful for her to have the full family there. And for me, I think I can completely understand, because and I've put myself and meditated on like me sitting in that room that she's going to be sitting in, and they administer this injection, and you close your eyes knowing it's going to be the last time. That is such a ineffable moment that you cannot put words to, that having the added like pressure, stress, or just expectations of other people, like of how you should respond or how you should behave, should you, like, any excess kind of emotional charge in that moment, like it's not about me. It's not about my family. It's about her going out in a way that feels like so good to her, and whatever she needs in that moment is what she's going to get. So if that just means having her two children there, then that's what it means. And um I've made my peace with that. I mean, I think it would be an honor and a blessing and a privilege to witness the final moments. I did talk to my dad about it, and he's still wrapping his head around it. How are we going to be? What's going to happen? And I think for me, my advice was just like, look, and I'm speaking again from my perspective, but if I was sitting in that chair, the best thing that could happen is like someone cracks a dirty joke, or someone just, transforms the energy in the room from this thing that's like so unbelievably, indescribably sad and joyous and bittersweet and all of that. Like, to have someone there who can just make you laugh is like, to me, that would be the biggest blessing. And I know, like, if I ever decide to go out this way, like if my husband's still around, he will absolutely do that for me. He will sit in the room and crack the dirtiest joke, and I'll just be like laughing and be like, "Hey, love you, bye," on my way out. That's how I want to go. And for her, she's such a fun spirited person and loves to laugh, that I think that's the best thing that could happen. But I just, and I'm sure you've interviewed people on this program before who have contemplated the same thing, but really putting yourself in that chair, in that moment, when you are looking at this person who's about to inject you, and that's it, and you're going to close your eyes and you will not wake up. That is incomprehensible for me to think about. That is just so wild, and such a moment just so poignant with, like, it's just like so much emotion wrapped up into one little single ball, because it's not like all sad, and it's not all fear, and it's not all joy, right? There's all of these things. It's like the most you can ever feel. And just thinking about that, it's enough to push anyone over the edge into feeling something.
Yeah, I love the way you describe all those emotions in that space. Most people probably wouldn't say joy.
Yeah, I think most people wouldn't say joy, you're right. But my bubby, for one, has said she's happy to go. And for me, when I again put myself in that situation, and when I do death meditations myself, there is the like insane levels of sadness, longing, grief, just all of that loss. But there's also so much joy, because you have this reflection of the life that you've lived and the blessings that you've had, all wrapped up into these final moments that you're trying to draw out into longer seconds, like really trying to draw the time out to as much as it can be. And in those spaces, yeah, there absolutely is joy. I mean, how could you not? There's just so much. The world is so amazing and wonderful and vibrant and alive, that how could you not look around you at this like spectacle of material existence and just be like, oh my God, I got to be here. Like, I got to be here for a second. And that is the most joy that you can ever feel.
Yeah, I love that. Um, you used a word that I thought was really interesting. You said, you wrote this on your Instagram, how to live well and die well are codes.
Mm.
Now we get dress codes, and there's codes that give us access to cars and rooms and new levels of games. Did you choose the word codes for a reason?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think the way you just described it was perfect. There's codes to give you access to rooms and doors and places maybe that you wouldn't have access to. And codes are, many times people who are also maybe more spiritual or doing work in that way, they can describe things as codes when they feel like kind of downloads, right? Like, there's sometimes messages that come through that maybe don't really make sense in the context of the situation that you're in, but it was also like you just got this download, and it was like, whoa, like all of these revelations and epiphanies just happened at this time in this place, and it's opened up this whole new door, this whole new world. And watching someone live well and die well being codes are codes that you can pass on. It's like a code that's like it's a hidden code, but it's a code that you can, like, just by witnessing it, be passed on. And for children of parents or grandparents who die well, that stays with you, and that code isn't forgotten. There's this like little code in you that knows when it's your time to come, that, oh, remember how my bubby died, remember how my dad died, remember how my mom died, and how they weren't scared, and they were accepting, and they were embracing the inevitability of this. Like, that's a code that you remember and that you can apply in your own hour of death. And unfortunately, so many people die so traumatically, or are in resistance to it, which is the case for my grandfather. His Bubby's husband, Arnie, he was in lots of resistance to his death, and it was, by all accounts, a very traumatic death. And that can instill a real sense, like, that's a fear code, right? Like, that can give us this fear code for our own death of, like, oh my God, this is something I have to fight, rage against the closing of dawn. Like, this is right. But there's also codes of being really just in surrender mode and accepting, like, okay, like, this here, come get me, like, come for me, let's do this. I'm just going to bend in your arms, and I'm just going to be putty for you. And that is a code that has a completely different frequency. And it's definitely something I've got from witnessing my bubby.
That's beautiful and very powerful. Like you said, when you actually witness a good death, likely you've witnessed a good life before that, but it doesn't leave you. It's very has a huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about your videos. As of yesterday, when I checked, one had been viewed 5 million times.
Wow.
Has the response surprised you?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I'm like, I've been a model for 10 years, and I do influencer work. And sometimes the videos that, like, get traction like that, you're just so surprised, because you're like, wait, there was like other videos that I've done that, like, got nothing, and they were, like, so powerful. And so it always takes you by surprise which ones kind of go viral like that. And it definitely took me by surprise. But then after really sitting on it, I was like thinking, you know what? I haven't really seen anything else like that. Like, I really haven't. When I really rack my brains and think about people, I don't see, and I don't know, maybe other people follow different channels, but I do not see conversations about death with a dying person. Like, I have never seen that. And I've heard podcasts, maybe some podcasts about it, and watched some documentaries, but really on social media, the place where we all get our news and where we all go to, like, just scroll, no, you don't see that. And so now it makes sense to me why it performs like that, because it's so taboo, and it's so, like, the unspeakable where we don't go. And some of the feedback was, of course, like, if anything goes viral, you're going to have negative feedback and positive feedback. Some people were like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. This has opened up something in my heart, in my mind. Other people were like, you're just posting this for clout. And how dare you speak about MAID, this unethical, suicide thing on social media. Like, you're normalizing this. So it was like so many people's emotions and anger and sadness and happiness that I had to experience with those videos. It was a lot. And I don't I don't really particularly enjoy going viral, and I have done before. It's not a very, like, soothing experience to your nervous system. But I really think that, when I made those videos and when I posted them, in my heart was like, this needs to be seen. Like, this needs to be talked about. Like, this is such a unique opportunity to bring something, a universal human experience, because none of us are getting out alive. no one. I know we don't like to think about it, but we're not. I'm sorry, people. Um, but to really talk about something that is so universal that bypasses partisan politics and views on, whatever is going on in the world, this trump cards it. And because we're all going to go through it, and really it's like sitting into like the opportunity that was there, was big for me. And some people who are saying you post this for clout, I was like, I just had to laugh because I was like, well, there's no way that you can ever know because you don't know me. Like, of course you can assume I'm posting this for clout, but you also don't know my intentions or my motivations, right? And my intentions when I made these videos and when I posted them was to show a life well lived and a really good death. And even for me watching my bubby, if that pretty much eliminated my fear of death, I'm assuming that it could do the same for millions of people. And the fear of death is like probably, I mean, it's the biggest motivator behind all actions everywhere, right? Any action that we take, whether it's like to switch jobs or choose a particular field of study or move to a certain place or hang out with certain people over other people, ultimately, if you distill it down, it all comes from the fear of death, that if you don't choose this, or if you do choose this, it's going to ultimately lead to your death, you losing your job and being on the streets and starving to death, right? That's really what's at the bottom of our motivations. And so when you touch on that, that's when like huge life shifting things happen, when you really get to the bottom of, do I really have to be afraid of death? Like, or is that a motivation that I don't really need anymore?
Yeah, I think you just tapped into a conversation that so many of us have with ourselves and have so few opportunities. Even people living up to death don't always talk about how they feel about their death. So even hearing your grandmother talk about her feelings was refreshing and inspiring.
Yeah. Watching people die traumatic deaths, I guarantee you, your mind will change when it's someone that you love. And you're going to want, even if it's not something that you would choose for yourself, you're going to want that option to be available to them. And I can tell you in the final months how many thousands of people wrote me that I would never have had access to speak to before. The amount of traumatic deaths that these people had written me about, watching their mother or their child or their grandparents or brothers or sisters die painfully over a long drawn out period, and they had tried to get them this option of medical assistance in death and couldn't, and it became extremely traumatic for them. Ask yourself, would your mind change if you had a loved one that wanted this and could not get it? And remember, to a lot of the people who were saying, it's suicide and the Bible or the Torah or the Quran speaks against this. Well, we don't all believe the same thing. And to ask other people to subscribe to our worldview about creator or religion is an impossibility. It's not going to happen, not in our lifetime. So we need to make way and make space for all worldviews and make sure they have whatever in place to allow them to practice their worldviews.
Faith Summerfield was the founder of the Completed Life Initiative, and she wanted to start a nationwide conversation on what it means to live a completed life. And her understanding was that when we talked about how we wanted to die, we would know more fully how we want to live. I think she would have loved the way you said this on Instagram. You wrote, "How can we better appreciate our mortality? Will we show up differently? Can we be more present? Can we love deeper? Can we let go of the small stuff?" I found myself thinking about it every day. Since doing so, colors are sharper, my baby smells even better, and my love for family is more intense.
I like hearing that read from you again. It's like I was like, wow, like can't believe I wrote that. That's so touching. But yeah, I think it's more true than ever. And being around the death of a loved one and crossing borders, which is really what this is all about. What it's about is about the bravery, humility, and wisdom to pass those thresholds, to cross those borders. And I think part of that, when we really like understand the power of that, that's when the present moment starts to show up really sharp and really clear. And it just can't not. Like, if you really appreciate that this is all just temporary, and that we get to experience all these iterations for a short little while, well, yeah, you're gonna see life in a whole new way.
Is there a ritual or some practice that you will do Sunday or sometime in the future to honor your grandmother's life?
Yeah. There's a couple. I think the one I'm going to be doing on Sunday is I'm going to be doing a death meditation that I've done a few times. It's hugely emotional, but it's important that I do it. And it's basically a meditation where you visualize that you're buried in the earth, that you're gone, and that all things have left, and there's just nothing, no body, nothing around you that you know. And you kind of wake to, and open your eyes to the world as if you're coming from that. So I'll be doing that on Sunday. And then moving forward, I um, am just going to, say some words over. I'm building an altar now with my ancestors on that altar, and say words to my ancestors to keep guiding me from the other plane, um, to thank them for their part in my life and my mission and my children's. And I also think, like, being with your ancestors is, the ritual of that happens long after they go too, for the rest of your life. There isn't just one moment, the funeral, where you say your bit and then move on. It's an ongoing process of having and speaking to them, of asking them, of praying to them for guidance and assistance to help illuminate obstacles along the path, to help them move on, maybe from generational or karmic struggles that they've had. Um, and that is ongoing until, for me, the day I die.
I love that. That's a powerful way to just remember their presence. In my faith tradition, we call it the cloud of witnesses, and just knowing that they're not far, as you said, your sense of your grandfather is just not far, and they're with us, and there's some seamlessness in the planes that we lose if we don't pay attention to or find rituals to connect to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's just very powerful, and your grandmother's courage and chutzpah and just ability to just show up and tell it like it is, and run the race and win.
Yeah.
She's still winning.
She is. She's still winning. And yeah, I hope and pray that her passing through these videos has kind of been immortalized and made a memory of, and a learning point and an opportunity for other people to have these conversations with their loved ones as they pass, and to go into it bravely and asking the questions that, like, the one thing I really want to leave everyone with, and I'm sure people who are listening to your podcast are already really aware of these questions and aware of death, but for anyone that isn't, like, there are questions and space holding. There's things that we in the world of the living can do to make this transition easier for that person. And sometimes a lot of people don't want to ask questions that are too hard or that elicit an emotional response, but I dare you to ask those questions, because sometimes it can be the key to unlocking this person's acceptance for this moment. And they could be saying the things or thinking the thoughts or hearing the words that they needed to hear to move on into an accepting death. And you can be that person for them. And whether or not that means, like, if you're really uncomfortable with having these conversations. Maybe that's not your strength or your skill or your, that's not your role in this. Maybe your role is space holding and really holding them and caring for them and hugging them and loving them in the way that they need. But ultimately, like at your moment of death, at all of our moments in death, like we need those caretakers and those people there who are going to make this easier for us and to make the pulling away easier. And so we get to be those people for our loved ones. And that's a huge responsibility, but a huge blessing.
Yeah, this is really wonderful. And I will be thinking of you Sunday and praying for you and your family and your bubby. And it's a gift. And I think it's a holy ground to be there with people that are dying. There's a clarity and a peace, but also a fierce strength that just impacts you, and you go away different. You're a different person.
Yeah, absolutely. I love holy ground. That's true. It is. Absolutely. It's holy ground. Yeah. And to go into it and come out new. It's beautiful. Yeah. So thank you for having this conversation and having these conversations on this podcast. It's awesome. I love this. I love this world, this whole thing that opens up around topics of death. I think it's great.
This episode was previously recorded in early September. Ellie's bubby completed her life on September 10, 2023. May her memory be a blessing for us all. Thank you for joining us for the first episode of What Matters Most, Believing Beyond Borders. Please join us October 23rd as we interview Beatrice Pisano, the Colombian-Canadian award-winning actress who wrote, directed, and performed in her one-person play, Dividing Lines, which explores the gift of life and death through the lens of her mother's struggle with Alzheimer's. And again, on October 30th, our guest will be Rachel Timoner, Senior Rabbi at Beth Elohim in Brooklyn. Rabbi Timoner is featured in the Emmy-nominated film Last Flight Home. You can find other episodes from Voices of the Completed Life on our website, completedlife.org. Medical aid in dying is an end-of-life option that was legalized in Canada in 2016. Currently in the United States, it is legal in 10 states, plus the District of Columbia, and is only available to those who have received a terminal diagnosis with 6 months or less to live. On behalf of the Completed Life Initiative, thank you for listening.